The sun melted into the horizon like a bleeding ember, casting a golden fire over the Arizona desert. A lonely wind swept through the canyons, carrying whispers of forgotten battles and broken promises. Nita stood beside the narrow creek, her reflection shimmering like a ghost in the rippling water. Her dark eyes, wide and deep, caught the fading light, but her heart felt heavy, burdened by words she could no longer keep inside. "No man wants me," she whispered to the desert air, her voice trembling with pride and pain. It was not a cry of weakness but a confession to the world that had refused to understand her. In her Apache village, Nita was always the strange one, the girl who refused to bend. While the other women learned to weave baskets and grind maize, she followed her father into the hills, learning to ride bareback, track coyotes, and read the signs of the earth. Her laughter was loud, her will unyielding, her hands unafraid of dirt or blood. But as she grew older, her wildness became something the elders could no longer ignore. Men would glance her way, admire her spirit, yet turn aside for they wanted wives who obeyed, not women who met their gaze like equals. Her father, once a fierce warrior, had grown old and frail. His leg, shattered in a raid years ago, made every step a pain he bore in silence. He loved Nita, but his strength to defend her choices was fading. When the elders insisted she marry a rich trader from the border towns, a man twice her age with cold eyes and greedy hands, and her father's silence cut deeper than any insult. The night they told her of the arrangement, Nita felt the walls of the world closing in. That night, she did not sleep. She sat outside her lodge, watching the stars wheel across the black sky. Every spark above seemed a spirit, every gust of wind a warning. Her mother had once told her that freedom was the soul's truest breath, and that to lose it was worse than death. At dawn, Nita saddled her pony, packed her bow in a small pouch of dried meat, and rode away without a word. The sun rose behind her, turning her shadow long and thin against the sand. She didn't look back once. For 2 days she rode across the plains, following the whisper of rivers and the smell of rain. Hunger gnawed at her belly, and thirst cracked her lips, but she pressed on, guided by a fierce, quiet hope that somewhere, beyond the reach of her tribe's rules, there was a place for her spirit. But freedom, like the desert, is cruel to the unprepared. On the second night, a storm rolled across the mesas, lightning flashing like white knives. Her horse stumbled over a loose stone, falling hard. She struck the ground, pain tearing through her shoulder. When the storm finally passed, Nita lay weak and trembling beside her wounded pony. Dawn found her barely conscious, her lips dry, her mind drifting between dream and death. She thought she saw shapes moving through the dust, men on horseback, their shadows tall and strange. She tried to reach for her bow, but her strength failed her. Boots crunched against the sand. A man's voice broke through the haze, low, steady, uncertain. Luke Carter, the rancher, stood over her. His hat shadowed his eyes, but she could see the line of his jaw, the strength in his stance. His world was simply cattle, fences, sun, and survival. And yet something about the girl before him stopped him cold. She was proud even in pain, her hand still clutching her bow as though the earth itself might try to take it from her. For a long moment, neither moved. The wind carried only the rustle of grass and the soft groan of her fallen horse. Luke knew the unspoken laws of the border. Helping an Apache meant trouble. The army, the ranchers, even his neighbors would call him a fool, or worse. But when Nita's eyes flickered open, full of defiance even through her weakness, something in him shifted. He knelt beside her, tipped his canteen, and let water touch her cracked lips. She swallowed. Barely. He didn't know then that one small act, a sip of water, a glance of mercy, would break traditions older than both their worlds. And somewhere in the stillness between their breaths, the desert held its silence, as if watching two souls whose paths were never meant to cross, begin to entwine. The world came back to Nita slowly, like the sun rising over the desert after a long, cold night. She woke to the smell of coffee and smoke, the crackle of fire nearby. Her shoulder ached, her lips still dry, but warmth surrounded her, a rough wool blanket, a steady fire, and the faint sound of humming. When she opened her eyes, she saw him again, the tall man from the canyon, sitting a few feet away, his hat tilted forward as he poured coffee into a tin cup. His dog lay by his boots, tail thumping once when it noticed her stir. "You're awake," the man said, his voice quiet but firm, carrying the drawl of the frontier. He handed her the cup, and she hesitated before taking it. His blue eyes studied her, not with pity or disgust, but curiosity, maybe even respect. "Name's Luke Carter. You're lucky I was riding the fence line this morning. Another hour, and the buzzards would have found you first." Nita sipped the bitter coffee, its warmth spreading through her chest. She didn't answer at first, unsure if she could trust him. Men of his kind rarely offered kindness to her people without reason. "I didn't ask to be saved," she finally said, her voice soft but steady. Luke raised an eyebrow, half a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Didn't say you did," he replied, "but you were dying out there, and I ain't want to let someone die if I can help it, even if she's Apache." The way he said it, and not as an insult, just a fact, made her eyes narrow. He didn't seem afraid, just cautious, as if walking on unfamiliar ground. For 3 days, Nita stayed in the small cabin on his ranch, her body healing slowly. Luke brought her food, checked her wound, and spoke little. She could tell he was a man used to silence, the kind who let the land do most of the talking. But in those quiet hours, she watched him out, the way he moved with calm strength, the way he treated his horse like a friend instead of a tool. He didn't ask her about her tribe or why she'd been alone. That silence, in itself, felt like a strange mercy. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in red and gold, Nita stepped outside, her arm still bound but her spirit restless. Luke was fixing a fence nearby, his shirt damp with sweat, his muscles taut beneath the fading light. "Why'd you help me?" she asked suddenly. He didn't look up right away, driving another nail into the post. "'Cause you needed it," he said simply, "and because my ma raised me better than to walk away from someone who's fighting to stay alive." Her eyes softened, but her voice carried an edge. "Your people and mine don't usually help each other." Luke finally met her gaze. "Maybe that's the problem," he said. "Too many folks doing what they're told instead of what's right." For a moment, the wind between them seemed to hold its breath. She felt something shift, a warmth she hadn't known in a long time, a spark that defied the rules of both their worlds. But rumors travel faster than wind in the desert. By the end of the week, riders from town had begun to talk, whispers about a rancher harboring an Apache girl. The local marshal rode up one morning, his badge glinting like the sun, his tone sharp. "Heard you've got company out here, Luke. That true?" Luke stood tall, his jaw tight. "Got no company that concerns you," he replied evenly. The marshal spat dust. "You're playing with fire, Carter. Folks don't take kindly to your kind mixing with theirs." After the marshal left, Nita's hands shook with anger. "You should have let me go," she said, her voice trembling. "They'll turn against you for helping me." Luke looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Let them talk," he said. "I don't live my life for their approval." But she could see the weight in his eyes, the risk he was taking, the storm that was sure to come. That night, as coyotes cried in the distance, Nita stood by the fire, watching its glow flicker over the wooden walls. Her heart was torn between fear and gratitude, between the urge to flee and the desire to stay. She had never met a man who looked at her as an equal, who saw beyond her name and blood. Luke had broken a law older than the desert itself, the unspoken rule that divided their worlds. And though neither of them dared to speak it aloud, something in the quiet night said their fates were already bound, and there would be no turning back. The morning broke with the low hum of danger hanging in the air. The wind carried a strange stillness across the Carter ranch, the kind that came before a storm, not of rain, but of men. Nita stood by the corral, brushing the horse Luke had given her to tend. Her shoulder had healed, but her heart remained heavy. Every glance toward the horizon filled her with unease. She could sense eyes on her, even when none were there. Luke had told her to stay inside that day, but she couldn't stand being trapped any longer. Freedom had been the only thing she ever wanted, yet here she was again, cornered by the fear of what others might do to the man who'd saved her. By noon, riders appeared in the distance, 5 of them, armed, faces grim beneath their wide hats. They were ranchers from town, men who didn't bother to hide their hate. Luke stepped off the porch, shotgun in hand, his shadow cutting across the dust. "Morning, boys," he said evenly, his tone calm but sharp as barbed wire. The leader, a heavy-set man named Briggs, sneered. "We heard you been harboring a redskin. Don't tell us it ain't true." Luke's eyes narrowed. "What happens on my land's my business." Briggs spat into the dirt. "Not when you're bringing savages this close to town. We can't have that filth mixing in." Before Luke could speak, Nita stepped forward, her chin high, her dark eyes burning. "I'm not filth," she said, her voice cutting through the dry air. "I didn't ask to be saved, but I won't be hunted for it." The men shifted uneasily. Few had ever heard an Apache woman speak like that. Briggs scowled. "You best learn your place, girl." Luke stepped between them, his voice a growl now. "She's on my land, under my protection. You want trouble, you'll find it here." For a moment, silence reigned. The sun beat down hard, the horses stamped the dust, and the wind carried only the sound of breathing, a heavy, tense, waiting. Briggs spat again and turned his horse around. "You just made yourself an enemy of every man in this county, Carter," he called over his shoulder. "Don't expect mercy when the time comes." Luke watched them ride away, his jaw tight. When they disappeared over the ridge, Nita turned to him. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "They'll come back." Luke holstered his gun slowly. "Let them," he said. "I've fought harder men for less." Yet behind his calm, she saw the weight of his choice, the realization that helping her had cost him his peace, maybe even his life. Days passed in uneasy quiet. Luke tried to go about his chores, but something in the rhythm of the ranch had broken. Nita wanted to leave, to spare him the wrath that was surely coming, but every time she packed her things, his voice stopped her. "You ride off alone again, and you'll die," he told her one night by the fire. "Out there, the world doesn't forgive." "Not them, not you." She looked at him through the flicker of flames, her heart aching. "And what about you?" she asked softly. "Who forgives you?" He met her gaze, and in the silence between them, the answer was clear, and no one ever had. The night the fire came, it came fast. Flames tore through the barn, ignited by torches thrown from the darkness. Luke's dog barked madly, horses screamed, and the air filled with smoke. He ran out, rifle in hand, shouting Nita's name. Men on horseback circled the property, their faces lit by hate and fire. "Carter!" one of them yelled. "We warned you." A shot rang out, hitting the porch post beside him. Nita grabbed her bow, firing an arrow that struck one of the rider's arms, sending him tumbling. Luke fired twice, driving the rest into retreat, but not before a bullet grazed his shoulder. He staggered, clutching the wound, the smell of burning wood filling the night. By dawn, the barn was gone, the ranch half destroyed, but the attackers had fled. Nita tore a strip from her dress, pressing it to Luke's bleeding arm as tears slipped down her face. "You've lost everything because of me," she whispered. He caught her hand, his voice rough. "No," he said, "I found something worth fighting for." She looked up at him, then really looked and saw the truth in his eyes. In a world built on walls and hate, they had chosen each other. When the smoke cleared, they stood side by side, bruised but unbroken. The desert stretched endless before them, but now it no longer felt like exile. Luke rebuilt slowly, with Nita at his side, her spirit guiding his every step, and though the townsfolk whispered, none dared ride against them again. Tradition had been broken, yes, but in its place stood something stronger, something freer, the kind of love that even the Wild West couldn't bury.